Most enjoyable part is actually the roast. When I get the roaster fired up and get that coffee in there, it's the best part of it. Yeah, so this right here, this is the roaster that I started basically the company started off of. This was, I purchased this back in 2014. This thing can roast some coffee, but I was getting to the point where it couldn't do enough. This is my res ride right here. You can see the handle's broken off, but it still works, man. One really eye-opening part for me in getting this started and getting it set up was I had the opportunity. I was in a program called NEAR, Native Entrepreneur in Residence, and they were based out of New Mexico. It's New Mexico Community Capital. The mentor I was paired with, her name is Vicky. She introduced me to some coffee roasters in Albuquerque, and they invited me into their space. And the eye-opening part for me was seeing their packaging area to actually see how small of a space they were using to package their product. And they're a big, relatively large roaster, but just, you know, right there, being able to walk into an existing owner's space and see what they were doing with it, that gave me an understanding, again, because I could kind of visualize and plan, but seeing what they were doing, I said, okay, I can make this happen within this space, and then just kind of build it out from there. So regardless of what your company is or the product you're working with, you got to think about your process flow, whether it's creating, cooking. Think about every part of that process that goes from start to finish. So valuable if you can visit with somebody that's in the business, pick their brain, see how their layout is, and just adapt it to your specific situation. I think that really helps. So I've been homebrewing for many years, and I guess that's my biggest thing is starting with something, the raw ingredients, and creating the final product, you know. So the first time I dropped the beans into the drum, I was excited, of course, but kind of nervous. I was like, man, I don't want to screw this batch up, you know. But that was on the little guy. So that's where I got the first taste of the actual whole process of roasting, and then just jumping into a much larger machine, that was a whole nother level of excitement and nerves too, because I was dropping 4 pounds of green coffee in there, and now I'm doing 20 pounds. So I'm like, man, if I screw this up, that's quite a bit of money. But as the beans are rotating, they make this sound. And for me, it sounds like the bird songs, the gorge singing that we do traditionally down here. It's almost that same rhythm, man, and it's pretty cool. So that's kind of, it's always a reminder when I'm roasting. It's like the pipa are there just throwing the gourd. Basically, the songs tell stories. So depending on the ceremony or what's happening, the songs themselves will be telling a story, and that's really what this reminds me of when I heard it. Was just, it's always going in the background. So this is kind of telling the story of coffee, you know, on the reservation here. So it's just a pretty cool connection. And then it makes me think about the journey that the coffee has taken. Like I've said before, is this was grown somewhere either in Central or South America. This one is Colombia specifically, but think about the people that planted the seeds, and they have community and culture too. You know, what kind of expression do they have for their cultures, and just ties everything together. You know, like I said, from the grower wherever they're at comes to us here on the res, and roasting it on the res, and then we ship it off all over the country. So it's just an amazing journey that this coffee seed is taking, and then you know, it's just appreciate it. You appreciate what you do, and that's the passion. That's where the passion and the love come from. We're starting to hear what's referred to as first crack. So if you'll notice the pops, it's like popcorn. So what's happening is basically it's called an exothermic reaction. So the last bit of moisture in the coffee seed is vaporizing, and it's popping the coffee a lot like popcorn, and you can hear it. From this point on until I drop it is basically where they say all the flavor and aroma, all those compounds are being generated by the heat. So this is where it's really getting its nuance. And it's up to the roaster, depending on what your goal is, where in this process you're going to finish the coffee. So depending on what the goal is dark roast or a medium roast, that's what you're paying attention to and when it's going to be finished. It's almost done here. So we're going to be dropping it in that. Turning on the cooling tray. And so now the program is recording the temperature. So this blue line is basically giving us the temperature of where the beans are. This red one is basically the environmental temperature. So it's the thermal probes are in different parts of the roaster. So this is kind of in the bigger picture in the drum itself, but this is right where the beans are. And if you'll notice, I charged it at a certain temperature. When you drop the green coffee in, it's going to drop the temperature internally way down. So that's what's happening, is that it's cooling off in the drum, but it hit the low point. So that's called the turning point. That's where it went from losing temperature to starting to gain temperature now. So this is what's happening to the coffee at this point. And we're going to go through 3 phases. And the colors are kind of giving you an idea. This is where it should end up. Everyone is a little bit different, but what's happening now all the way through to that green phase is called the drying phase. So basically, the little bit of remaining moisture in the bean, which is roughly 10 to 12% moisture, is getting cooked off. So it's basically the beans are getting dried, and then all the rest of the stuff happens in these 2 phases. So this process is about 6 to 8 minutes before we get to the end of the roast. Now it's starting second crack. So it went through a process of first, and now it's entering second crack. This has given me a picture of what happened in the roast. So this is just showing me the journey that the beans took from making it really cool to warming up and finishing the roast there. So that's called a profile of the roast profile. Where we're at here is actually used to be the floodplain of the Colorado River. So when the river was fully flowing, this was all pretty much floodplain. And traditionally, the Quetzal used to farm along the rivers after the flood. So the flood would come, the waters would recede, and we would plant our crops in the recently flooded valley. So in this area, but as you can see today, it's industrial farming. So the tribe predominantly operates off of agriculture, at least the land to farm. I think we have wheat right now that we're doing. But yeah, so still there's that continuation of farming along the river, but it's obviously different now. Over a long period of trial and error, when I first started on the small roaster over there, I did a lot of reading, studying, so I had a basic idea of what occurs and what needs to happen, but really you can only pull so much from textbooks and reading. That's great, gives you some understanding, but I had to jump on the small roaster to really start seeing how those inputs affect the roasting process. So it was a period of a few years of trial and error, and then when I was able to engage with Native Capital Access and get the business loan, It allowed me to jump up in the roaster, build out this space, and then I took a professional course in Northern California, a professional roasting course. So after the few years of practice, I was able to roast with some professionals that have been doing it for, you know, their entire careers. So they were able to refine some of the stuff I learned on my own, teach me some new things about roasting. And again, it validated some of the things I had learned just on my own. So it's just, you know, it takes time and repetition. I've roasted hundreds, maybe 1,000 batches by now. So, and I'm still learning. There's always something new to pick up. It takes a lot. That's why I say it's roasted with love. You know, it takes passion and love to want to do this to the best that it can be done. And like I said, each coffee is different, so you're always on your toes. You can never think you know everything, man, because there's always something different that comes your way, and it's that way with life and coffee as well, man. So. Yeah, this is our community. This is our home. Something I think that's really special is being able to look at these mountains and recognize that, you know, I'm looking at the same skyline that my ancestors looked at 1,000 or more years ago. So it's pretty special to come back home and have the company being operated here on our traditional homeland. So for me, that makes it really special. Especially, you know, having that behind it. So, yeah, just glad to be back in our community.